Canadians, Americans, members of the Commonwealth, and patriots the world over. Welcome to the show that tells you what they won't, exposing the fake news, conspiracies, and corruption within institutions that govern our lives, and red-pilling the nations one fact at a time. It's Weathering the Storm with your host, Canada's Red Pill, Billy Joyce.
Hey folks, and welcome to another show. As I said in my last show, I watched an Abel Danger live stream the other day, and of course Field McConnell and Dave Hawkins. Dave Hawkins are always very entertaining, and they're always throwing us for loops at times with different news. I wanted to focus today on one particular thing that Field McConnell said in the live stream, and I'll let you take a listen to it now. They were talking about what was coming in North Korea, not in North Korea because it's actually going on in Singapore, the North Korea United States summit between President Trump and Kim Jong-un. And it seems like Abel Danger is of the same opinion that I am as far as actual negotiations on things like denuclearization and peace between the Koreas, everyone basically in Asia and the United States. So it seems that we're on the same page there as far as that's going to be taken care of. But there are other things that may be going on in Singapore, and Field alludes to something pretty huge that I've heard about a couple times. More than a couple times. I've heard about it quite a bit. I remain skeptical, but have a listen to what Field talked about here and pay attention to what he says about a global reset.
But Donald Trump and world leaders, including Singapore, the U.S., China, Russia, iffy on Iran. Iran may or may not. Iraq, Vietnam, and Zimbabwe. There is a global reset occurring, and the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers are going to be out of business by this time next week. I am confident.
Now that global reset that Field referred to, while the Abel Danger live stream was going on, many of us were participating in a campfire chat, and in that chat I literally asked Field if he meant the global currency reset, and Field indeed confirmed that yes, that's what he was talking about. Now, for anyone wondering what the hell a global currency reset is, I just recently learned of this notion, this idea, this theory, and it's actually been written about on many different websites over the years, and apparently it's been attempted before, but always prevented by the same globalists, the globalist Illuminati, New World Order people. I guess they've always done their best to make sure it didn't happen. Like, for example, I speak to you often of Agent Kilted Fox from the Abel Danger Discord group. He mentions often how Jassara was supposed to happen at 9/11, and that they carried out 9/11, the cabal, in order to prevent that, because other things were now necessary to do. Plus, you got the trillions of dollars that, well, I'm not sure if it was trillions, but hundreds of millions of dollars that disappeared at Ground Zero that day, like gold and other monies, like the records that were destroyed in World Trade Center 7. So Jassara is not a new concept, but it seems that we're on the brink of something pretty huge, and according to Field McConnell, it may happen as early as this coming week. Now, there is a website that I'm gonna send you to. It's called the event-chronicle.com/study/what-is-GESARA/. So if you want to go there and follow what I'm about to read to you with me, feel free. I'm going to post the link in the description. But basically, it talks about 3 different things that must be accomplished right away in order for Jesara to happen. Now, anyone who believes the Bible like I do, well, you're going to understand soon why I'm skeptical. But at the same time, I've always been the type to think outside the box. I've always been the type to entertain pretty much any notion, with the exception of anything that would be, that I'd consider harmful or evil or detrimental to my relationship with Jesus, for example. Now, the thing is I'm going to read some of these. So the first one is the global and public proclamation of a global jubilee or debt forgiveness and universal reset of planetary Earth humanity back to a universal system of common governance in transparent and good standing with other member beings of the Galactic Federation. Okay, so I still have a hard time with the whole Galactic Federation. However, I do believe the Bible. I've said this many times. And one thing the Bible isn't necessarily 100% clear on is exactly who or what God really is. Like, we know there were fallen angels, for example. Like, the Old Testament talks about these fallen angels that fell from heaven, the fallen angels that came to earth. And so where did they come from? A lot of people don't, we have this notion of heaven, and we have this notion of hell, and we have this notion, the Catholics teach purgatory, but really, do we really know where heaven is? I don't. It's like, do we really know, can anyone really know the identity of the Creator? I know I can't. The Bible's not clear on that. The Bible is clear that Jesus Christ came to earth 2,000 years ago. That's clear. The Bible's clear that whoever God is, that he created everything. I believe that. But when it comes to going beyond that, it's not perfectly clear. It's like the mention of UFOs in the Bible, for example. A lot of people don't realize that UFOs are mentioned in the Bible, but they are. Flying scrolls are mentioned in the Bible. Jesus went up on a cloud. Where'd he go? Stuff like that. Enoch walked with God. Well, what's that about? What does that mean? So again, there are a lot of things that are unexplained that there probably is an explanation for, but we're only going to find out about it later, whenever we become divine beings. So yeah, there are some things that I believe on faith. There are other things that I really don't know. And anyone who claims full knowledge on everything are full of crap. So anyway, this whole universal system of common governance and this Galactic Federation, it's news to me. Do I know enough about it to say either way that it's bull? No. Do you? Probably the first time you heard of it. Implementation of Jesara as a universal constitutional framework for global governance in all 209 sovereign nations per the signed 2015 Paris Agreement on Climate Change, starting with the Restored Republic of the United States. A lot of people don't realize that the United States Republic hasn't really existed in a long time. They've been running under Admiralty law. Take a look at the flag in pictures over the last 30, 40 years at official events, and you'll see a gold fringe around that flag, and then go do a Google search as to what the gold fringe represents. The third thing that's going to happen before Jesara, before this one here, again, if you're a Christian, you're going to have a hard time with this one. Mass human disclosure of both non-humanoid extraterrestrial life and existence on the surface of this planet and throughout our shared galaxy. Yeah, I'm a little dumbfounded at it myself. But again, is it possible? I've heard of the stories of Dulce, New Mexico, and underground bases there. I've heard the stories of Area 51. I've seen the hieroglyphs of people depicted in spacesuits thousands of years ago. How in the hell, So, am I open to this notion of extraterrestrial life? I know extra-dimensional life certainly exists, and I know the angels came here from heaven, so could that be perceived as extraterrestrial life? I would say so. But, again, I don't claim to know it all. I'm just throwing information at you that you've probably never heard. So why would Gesara even be necessary? The existing cabal governing authority has intentionally and methodically hid humanity's historical truth, including alien occupation and genetic tampering, for over 13 millennia. And thus why Gesara implementation is necessary now, as the galactic community has been tasked to stop and reverse the momentum of such a rebellious and blatant action against the creator source and human species. Together with humanity, all love warriors of the white light will now put an end to cabal deceit, as well as reinstitute universal truth and justice without further delay or negotiation. Again, tough to wrap your head around that, right? But let's take a look at what's gone on since November 8th, 2016, since Donald Trump's election. Look at how many child traffickers have been picked up. You're talking possibly up to 10,000 now. Just child traffickers. Tens of thousands of children rescued. It's just not reported. You can go look it up. There's some all over the world. Now, you look at some of the stuff that I've uncovered in my videos, and there are hundreds of people like me on YouTube uncovering similar stories. Is it all just coincidence? Is it coincidence that you're sitting here watching this video right now? Is it coincidence that you may go speak to a friend or a relative about it? Is it a coincidence that there are more and more people waking up to what's actually going on? Is it really coincidence? And is there something to it? Is this Gesara? Is there something to this? And it says 25 specific items, but expect dozens more. So the idea of Gesara is to restore constitutional law in the Republic of the United States, remove USA Inc. administration officials and all members of the U.S. Congress from their positions due to their continuous unconstitutional actions, forces the USA Inc.'s president, the vice president, cabinet members, and all members of Congress to leave office, suspends all elections everywhere in the world at all sovereign levels of government, allows new Republic of the United States appointees to temporarily govern the country's affairs until fair and legal elections can be held, and allows Republic military law enforcement to physically remove or eliminate any obstacle impeding Gesara law. So, what I've been told by a few sources now is that President Trump right now is acting on behalf of this behind-the-scenes government that's been run by General Dunford for a few years now, where President Trump was actually recruited to bring an end to the global domination that we've all been victims of our entire lives. Now, I'm not going to go through everything that there is in this Gesara website, okay? Because it's linked in the description. But some of the stuff that they're talking about in there is an elimination of all your debt, an elimination of all taxes except for a flat rate tax, so that you can have minimal government. Minimal taxation, minimal government, minimal size of government, and government only taking care of what government should take care of, like roads and public infrastructure, maybe even public health. But I think that part of this Gesara, I think we're going to find out that there are healthcare methods, and whether Gesara happens or not economically, I really hope, we're seeing it now with marijuana and the derivatives of marijuana. People are waking up on this planet. People are realizing that there's something drastically wrong. And I've been reluctant to talk about Gesara because to the average Christian, and this is the way it was to me, the Bible states clearly that only Jesus can bring peace on earth. And I agree with that. I agree 100% that what's written in the Bible will happen eventually. But this Gesara, what this could do is take the separation of wheat and the chaff even a step further. Because if everyone's debts are removed and these trillions of dollars, or you can't even pronounce the name of it, it's one with 40 zeros after it. This is apparently what the world's richest, so we're talking the Rothschilds, the Vatican, the royal families of the world, all these top echelons of society, this is the wealth that they have. I thought it was 1 with 54 zeros. It's 1 with 40 zeros. Just do the math of that. How much money is that? A 1 with 40 zeros. Now, what I've been told is that what we've been uncovering recently is that, for example, Nikola Tesla had free energy already developed. But guess who got rid of them? The oil companies, the electric companies. So imagine, even if all you got back was, let's say, every dollar you ever spent on oil or on electricity or on gas, I'm talking heating oil, gas, electricity. Just imagine what you'd have if that, if income tax is really illegal the way they say it is. I mean, Canada's national debt was fine until 1982. Then it skyrocketed. How do you explain that? So we sign our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and all of a sudden we're in debt to who? To private bankers. But they've been setting it up like this because prior to that, the royal family and the Rothschilds own Canada anyway, and they still do. Just now they do it through their banks as well, so they make all the money. And if they're not making the money, the Roman Catholic Church is making the money. Think of how much property they own right where you're living. Think how much money they pick up in their baskets every week. Do you really think it's being reinvested in your community? Sure. So the idea of Jasara makes sense, in a way. But what it will do, in my opinion, let's say you find out, you find out next week that you're going to get a $3 or $4 million check, or a $1 million check, or a $500,000 check every 6 months for the next 10 years. Would you quit your job? Would you stop doing what you got to do? Would you plant gardens and get yourself self-sustained? Or would we go to even greater lengths to be what the Bible refers to as sinful? It's quite the question to ask ourselves, right? So if this Jasara is real, this global currency reset, we should be seeing stuff in the news that reflects stuff like that. Well, you've got China that went to their gold-back currency. There's rumors that Deutsche Bank could be folding. I've heard from sources inside the U.S. that there are IRS people being given pink slips after 30 years of service. So I'm hearing a lot of things going on. I mean, there's one guy that I listen to, and I've been meaning to share that with you for a while. There's one guy I listen to on YouTube whom I enjoy. He's actually from Italy. And by listening to him, I've actually been able to... Total Eclipse is the name of the guy. And by listening to him, I've actually been able to gain insight into what's going on in Italy and the populist movement that's gathering speed across the world, gathering momentum. You look right here in Canada with the election of rest in peace, Rob Ford, Doug Ford, Rob Ford's brother. I mean, that's huge, because what that is, it's like when Donald Trump was running in the election and they all thought he'd lose. Well, the polls had the NDP and the Conservatives basically tied, and the Conservatives walked away with, I believe it was 74 seats. I mean, the Liberal Party lost their party status. So some places like Mississauga, where they didn't think they'd have a chance, they thought for sure the NDP candidate would win, Ford pulled it off. So what's happening there is you're talking the 4th, 5th, 6th generation Canadian who's a welder or a pipe fitter or a steel worker who's walking on a freaking beam, who's sick and tired of seeing illegal immigrants or improperly vetted refugees come to Canada and basically try to impose their culture on ours. And I think what we're seeing now is this silent majority finally standing up. People like you and I. People who come from 4th or 5th or 6th generation Canadians. I mean, my ancestors have been on Canadian land since the early 1600s. anywhere from 1608 to 1612 or so. You know, there are people probably watching this whose ancestors have been here since the 17th, 18th century, or even the 19th century. But right up until 1972, 99% of all immigration was European Christian. And I know I'm getting a little off topic, but think about this global cabal. Think about when Justin Trudeau gave the eulogy at Pierre Trudeau's funeral and addressed the people in the crowd as Romans. Romans. What the hell was that? And who was in the room? Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, Fidel Castro, George Bush. Well, think about that. Wrap your head around that. Romans. Not Canadians. He said countrymen, but Romans. So, do I think we've been ripped off enough that if they wanted to, they could actually do the global currency reset and put a couple of $1 million in every single person on the planet's bank account? Yeah, I think it's possible. Do I think we'll see it? I'm on the fence. I really am. Now, from what I hear, the proof that this hoarding has been taking place and the proof that they want to keep us in debt and enslaved, just look at Africa. Look at how they've kept Africa, in some cases, deprived. You know, places in the Middle East. They have no vehicles, no running water. You got to wonder what all these countries have been doing with all the foreign aid countries like Canada and the US have been sending for all these years. You know, is it one or two families putting it all in their bank accounts in return for the natural resources that are there? You know, why aren't Canadians making money off of the water we're supplying to the entire world? Why is it that our government buys pipelines on our behalf without us knowing about it? What return do we get? We don't get a return. We get higher taxes. How does that work? How much money are Canadians making off the oil that's coming out of the ground? You know, there's no way the oil workers should be making double what they're making. It's the big companies and the government that are raping us. But they're the ones making the biggest money on it, on their trade deals. And speaking of trade deals, if Justin Trudeau and Macron and Merkel and the rest of them don't wisen up, they're going to end up in more than trade wars with the United States. The United States has about a $20 trillion GDP. Canada and the rest of the countries I just rhymed off are somewhere between 2 and 3. They think that they're going to screw with the U.S.? If the U.S. can't import from Canada, they'll import from Russia. Or they'll import from wherever the hell they want. With that kind of GDP. With that kind of buying power and selling power. As Canadians, we need to get off our high horse. We need to get off this our poop doesn't stink mentality. And we have to recognize that we're living next to the world superpower. And if what I think President Trump and the generals are doing, and what I mean by that is cleaning house worldwide, they are sticking it to the world right now. And when I say sticking it to the world, I don't mean the world's people, because the average person in Syria is happy with what Trump is doing. The average person in Iran is happy. The average person in North Korea is happy. The only people you hear complain are the CNN puppets every night, or the folks on NBC or CBC or CTV, or our government leaders. I wonder why. It's like this train in Halifax. Like they've been sticking it to us every which way for our entire lives. And we just go along with it. I was talking to someone the other day. They're making more money now. They're making double now what they've ever made. And can't keep up. They were making a third of what they're making now 20 years ago. And were living better then than they are now. How does that make sense? Where's all the money going? And who's enjoying it? Oh, that's right. We've got prime ministers that go to private islands and spend $300,000 of our money for a Christmas vacation. If this Jassara happens, what I'm hoping would happen is that we keep open all the service industries that people need in the modern era that we're living in. Like, for example, if they can actually put something on the wall of my house that allows me to tap in to free energy, well, then we don't need the big oil companies no more. We don't need, but we're going to still need construction workers, for example. We're still going to need electricians to wire the house. We're still going to need servicemen to service whatever cars we're driving, or we might be flying cars by then. I don't know. We're still going to need dentists. We're still going to need, but we may not need the pharmaceutical industries, for example. We may not need that. We may not need the producers of chemotherapy anymore. We may not need the vaccines anymore, because we're going to probably put a stop to creating the diseases that they find the cure for in the first place. So could GESARA happen? Absolutely it could happen, because there's lots of money out there that everyone could indeed be given a couple of $1 million each. And then instead of working Monday to Friday, sometimes 10 hours a day, to have 2 days off to enjoy your life, well, then maybe everyone could work 2 days a week, 3 days a week, zero unemployment. But you're not that concerned about working 50 hours to save up some money just to go on vacation once a year. Because I don't think life was meant to be the way we're living it. I think there are religious groups over the years that have manipulated the scriptures just to keep us enslaved, just to keep us thinking that they're our masters. And if we're entering an age, because right now this movement is being led by people who claim Jesus is their Lord. This is what this movement's being led by, whether people want to admit it or not. That's what's going on. So when people ask me about it, I'm like, well, here's the thing. No one really knows the day or the hour of Jesus' return. No one really knows exactly at which point we are in biblical history. No one really knows what God's plans are, because, I mean, we plan and God laughs. No one really knows. I mean, I read the Bible, I believe it. Why? Because there's no way anyone could have manipulated the prophecies of 2,000 years ago that are happening right in front of our faces. The Dead Sea Scrolls prove that those things were written 2,000 years ago. The mathematical impossibility that they were written by mere men is too overwhelming to ignore. And I feel that there is a distinct possibility that what God is doing right now as we speak is, I don't know what word to use, if reprieve is the right word to use, or some sort of mini awakening before the time gets worse. It's like there's so much evil being exposed that it wouldn't surprise me if God would use this time to help his sheep just before the very end. And when I say the very end could be 70 years away, it could be 100 years away, could be 200 years away, could be 300 years away. I don't know. I don't make timelines. And anyone that does make timelines, I'm not sure I trust them. But this whole GESARA thing, like I said, take it with a grain of salt. But my goodness, wouldn't it be glorious? And maybe if it doesn't happen this coming week, maybe we should all look into lobbying our local politicians and letting them know that we know how much money the governments have stored up and the religions have stored up so that they can keep us as debt slaves. We know that the banking system is a fraud. We know this stuff, and it's time for them to know that we know. I'm done now.
If you enjoyed this video, you may want to take a look at other videos you find on this page. Don't forget, if you like it, push the subscribe button under this video, and feel free to like and share with all your friends. Follow me on Twitter by following the link on this page. If you want to interact, feel free to post a comment, but please, no obscenities. Thanks for watching. Billy Joyce signing off and reminding you that I'm here to help you weather the storm.